Stop everything. Your soulmate decided to break their silence today. Here is proof. My beloved child. Stop everything for a moment, because the silence you thought might never end has just been broken in a way you were never supposed to see coming. Today, your soulmate made a decision they have been fighting against for far too long. They decided they cannot keep pretending anymore. They cannot keep carrying words meant for you while acting as if nothing is happening inside them. But here is where it becomes strange. Before they actually reached out, they did something that left behind proof of exactly what they were planning. Someone close to them noticed it. Something was written, saved, and almost sent. And the most surprising part is that your name was connected to it. So what finally happened today that made them say, "I'm done staying silent"? Don't skip, because the first clue only explains why they started, but not what they are preparing to tell you. For days, your soulmate had apparently been going back and forth with themselves. They would open a message, type a few words, erase them, then put the phone away. But today was different. This time, they didn't immediately delete what they wrote. They stared at it. Read it again. Then added another sentence. And according to what happened next, this wasn't some casual, "How have you been?" message. They were trying to explain the silence itself. Why they disappeared emotionally. Why they held back when part of them desperately wanted to speak. And why every attempt to move forward somehow brought their thoughts right back to you. Then came the proof that changed everything. They saved something connected to you that they had supposedly promised themselves they would remove. Why keep it if they were truly finished? Why look at it today, of all days? Because something happened shortly afterward that pushed their hesitation dangerously close to a confession. Your soulmate was asked one simple question today: if you could say one thing to that person without being interrupted, what would you say? At first, they didn't answer. That silence mattered. Because when they finally spoke, they didn't talk about forgetting you. They didn't say they had moved on. Instead, they admitted there was something you never knew about the moment they pulled away. Something they believed would change the way you understood everything that happened between you. And then they made a decision. You deserve to hear it directly from them, not through someone else. Stay till the end, because this is where their silence begins turning into action. The message was no longer sitting there unfinished. Your soulmate had gone back to it, added the words they had been afraid to write, and just before taking the next step, they revealed the real reason they had stayed silent for so long. The real reason was never that your soulmate had nothing left to say. It was the opposite. They had too much to say, and they were terrified that once the truth reached you, there would be no way to take it back. During the silence, they had convinced themselves that keeping their distance was somehow protecting both of you. But today, that excuse finally collapsed. Someone close to them asked why they still kept returning to an old conversation connected to you. Your soulmate tried to brush it off, but then something unexpected happened. They opened that conversation again and stopped at one particular message, the last moment when you had given them an opportunity to be completely honest. They had never answered it properly. And suddenly, they realized their silence may have told you something they never intended to say. That realization changed their entire mood. They began writing again, but this time the message wasn't cautious. It was personal. Your soulmate admitted that there had been moments when they almost contacted you, especially when something reminded them of the connection they had tried so hard to bury. They even confessed that they had drafted messages before and deleted them because they feared you might no longer want to hear from them. But here is the proof that today is different. Instead of deleting the newest message, they saved it and returned to finish it. Then they added a sentence that surprised even the person sitting nearby: "You deserve to know what really happened. Something huge is waiting for you," because those words point toward a truth much deeper than simple regret. And then another detail surfaced. The day your soulmate originally became distant, something happened behind the scenes that you were never told about. A conversation took place. Your name came up. Your soulmate heard something that made them question whether reaching toward you would create more pain, so they chose silence without giving you the chance to understand why. But now they have discovered that part of what they believed back then may not have been true. That is why today matters. They are no longer preparing only to say they miss you. They are preparing to correct something that may have shaped your entire understanding of their disappearance. And just when they were ready to send the message, they received another piece of information about that old conversation, something that made them stop, reread everything, and whisper your name before changing the very first line they planned to send you. The first line changed because your soulmate suddenly understood that a simple apology would never be enough. They erased the careful words they had written and replaced them with something far more revealing. "I should have told you the truth when I had the chance." That sentence wasn't written casually. It came after they learned that the old conversation which pushed them into silence had been missing one crucial detail. Your soulmate had believed you wanted distance. They had believed stepping away was what you needed. But today, they discovered there was another side to what happened, and it forced them to question every decision they made afterward. Imagine realizing that months of silence may have grown from something you misunderstood. That was the moment your soulmate stopped asking whether they should contact you and started asking how quickly they could finally explain themselves. Then came another piece of proof. Instead of hiding their feelings when someone close to them asked what they were doing, your soulmate admitted it openly: they were preparing to talk to you. No excuses. No pretending your name meant nothing. They even said they were willing to accept whatever response came back, because continuing to leave you with the wrong impression felt worse than facing rejection. But there was one part of the message they still struggled to write. It concerned what they felt during the time apart. Your soulmate had tried to convince themselves that enough distance would make those feelings disappear. It didn't. Certain memories kept returning at unexpected moments, and each one brought the same question. What if I walked away from the person I was supposed to fight for? Don't skip, because what they admitted immediately afterward explains why today became the breaking point. Your soulmate finally confessed that something happened recently that made the possibility of losing you feel real. They heard that your life might be changing, that you might be moving forward without waiting for answers that never came. Whether every detail they heard was accurate didn't matter. The thought alone shook them. Suddenly, silence no longer felt safe. It felt like a choice that could permanently close the door between you. So they returned to that unfinished message and added the confession they had avoided for so long. But before sending it, they did something even more significant. They opened something connected to you that they had kept hidden throughout the entire separation. It wasn't just an old message. It contained a reminder of the exact moment your soulmate realized their feelings for you were deeper than they had ever admitted, and what they found there made them add one final, unexpected sentence. That unexpected sentence was the one your soulmate had been afraid to admit even to themselves: "I never stopped caring about what happened between us." They stared at those words because writing them made everything real. The silence had allowed them to hide behind uncertainty, but this message would remove that protection completely. Then they returned to the hidden reminder they had kept all this time, something from a conversation when you had unknowingly said exactly what they needed to hear. They remembered how differently they felt afterward, how your words stayed with them long after the conversation ended. That was when they first realized losing you would hurt more than they wanted to admit. Yet instead of moving closer, fear made them retreat. Today, they finally recognized the contradiction. They had walked away because the connection mattered too much, not because it meant too little. But another truth was still missing from the message. Your soulmate knew they couldn't break their silence while leaving out the decision that caused everything to fall apart. So they began explaining what happened immediately before they became distant. Someone had warned them that reaching out to you could complicate your life, and at the time, they believed staying away was the respectful choice. Today, however, they learned that assumption had never actually come from you. That discovery hit hard. Your soulmate realized they had allowed another person's interpretation to become your answer without ever asking you directly. And now they were staring at the consequences. How many moments had been lost because of that misunderstanding? How many times had you wondered why they suddenly changed? Those questions became impossible for them to ignore, and the message grew more honest with every line. Then your soulmate did something they had avoided through every previous attempt: they stopped editing the message to make themselves look less vulnerable. They left the confession exactly as it was. They admitted the fear. They admitted the misunderstanding. And most importantly, they admitted that staying silent had become harder than facing whatever you might say back. But just as they were preparing to take the next step, someone close to them noticed one final detail on the screen and asked, "Are you really going to tell them that too?" Your soulmate didn't delete it. They didn't change the subject. They quietly answered, "They need to know." And the sentence that person had noticed wasn't about the past at all. It revealed what your soulmate wants to do if you give them one chance to speak today. What your soulmate wants now is more serious than sending one emotional message and disappearing again. The sentence they refused to delete said, "If you let me explain, I want to make this right instead of running from it again." That was the shift. For the first time, they weren't only looking backward at what went wrong, they were taking responsibility for what could happen next. Someone nearby asked whether they were prepared for you to be guarded, confused, or even unwilling to answer immediately. Your soulmate nodded. They understood that breaking their silence doesn't automatically erase what the silence did to you. Still, they said they would rather give you the truth and let you decide than keep making decisions for you from a distance. And then they began preparing something beyond the message. Something that would prove these weren't just emotional words written in a temporary moment. They went back through the timeline of what happened between you, checking details they had avoided because those memories were uncomfortable. That is when they found something important. The misunderstanding that originally pushed them away had a clear point where it could have been corrected. There was a message, a date, and a conversation that didn't match what they had been told. Your soulmate read it more than once. Suddenly, the proof wasn't only about their decision to contact you today. There was also proof that the story they had believed about your feelings may have been incomplete from the beginning. Their expression changed when they realized it. They weren't angry with you. They were frustrated with themselves for never asking the one question that could have changed everything. And now another question was haunting them. If they had known this then, would the two of you ever have gone silent at all? That question pushed them past the final hesitation. Your soulmate stopped rehearsing imaginary outcomes and focused on what they could actually control, the truth they were finally willing to give you. They finished the message. They reread every line without removing the vulnerable parts. Then they added one more detail. They wanted to speak directly, without anyone else interpreting your words or theirs ever again. But before taking that step, your soulmate received confirmation about the person who had influenced their original decision. What they learned made the entire situation suddenly look different. The warning that once sounded certain had apparently been based on an assumption, not something you had personally said. Your soulmate stared at that confirmation, then immediately returned to your message. Because now they weren't wondering whether they had misunderstood you. They were beginning to understand exactly how the misunderstanding happened, and who had known more than they admitted. The missing truth became impossible to ignore when your soulmate finally asked the question they should have asked long ago. They went directly to the person who had influenced their decision and demanded clarity. Did they actually say they wanted me gone? The answer did not come quickly. There was hesitation, a change of subject, and then an admission your soulmate was not prepared for. You had never said those exact words. What had been presented as certainty was really someone else's interpretation of your emotions during a difficult moment. Your soulmate went completely quiet. Suddenly, the distance between you looked different. They had spent all this time believing they were respecting your wishes, only to discover they may have been responding to words you never actually spoke. And that realization made their decision to break the silence today even stronger. Instead of reacting impulsively, your soulmate asked for every detail. When was your name mentioned? What exactly had been said? Why had nobody encouraged them to ask you directly? The answers exposed a chain of assumptions that grew larger every time the story was repeated. But one detail stood out above everything else. Apparently, even during that old conversation, there had been evidence that you were hurt by the distance, not asking for more of it. Your soulmate immediately remembered something you had said around that same time, a sentence they had misunderstood because they were already expecting rejection. Now, with the missing context in front of them, your words carried an entirely different meaning. Stay till the end, because this was the moment your soulmate realized their message could no longer be only an apology. They needed to tell you exactly what they had believed and give you the chance they should have given you from the beginning, the chance to answer for yourself. So they returned to the message one more time, but something had changed in their tone. The fear was still there, yet the uncertainty was disappearing. They added the specific misunderstanding, explained where it came from, and promised not to hide behind another person's interpretation again. Then came the strongest proof yet that today was different from every previous almost message. Your soulmate stopped saving the confession as a private draft and prepared it for you directly. Their finger hovered for a moment. Not because they wanted to run, but because they knew the next action could reopen everything between you. And just before they moved forward, they added one last line, one that revealed they weren't simply asking you to forgive the past. They were asking you a question about what could still happen between you now. The question your soulmate added was simple, but it carried the weight of everything they had been too afraid to say. If there is still something between us, will you let me explain before you decide what happens next? They didn't ask you to forget the silence. They didn't demand another chance. They simply wanted one honest conversation where nobody else could speak for either of you. And then something changed. Instead of staring at the message and imagining every possible rejection, your soulmate began thinking about what you deserved to hear first. The truth about why they disappeared. The truth about what they believed. And the truth about how many times they almost broke the silence before today. But there was still one confession they had kept out of every draft, because saying it would expose exactly how deeply this separation had affected them. That confession appeared when someone close to them quietly asked, "What happens if they answer?" Your soulmate didn't hesitate this time. They said they would tell you everything, including what happened during the nights when they nearly reached out and stopped themselves at the last second. They admitted they had repeatedly checked for some indication that the door between you wasn't completely closed. Not because they wanted to interfere with your life, but because part of them hoped they hadn't waited too long. Then they revealed something even more meaningful. They had kept a reminder of you because deleting it felt like pretending the connection had never mattered. That was the proof they couldn't explain away anymore. Their silence may have been real, but so was everything they had carried underneath it. And today, those hidden feelings were finally becoming words meant for you. Then the moment arrived that your soulmate had delayed again and again. The message was complete. No unfinished sentences. No convenient excuses. No other person standing between what they meant and what you would hear. They looked at your name, took one long moment, and made the decision they had been building toward all day. But immediately afterward, something unexpected happened. Your soulmate realized the written message still couldn't contain the most important truth. There was something about their voice, their emotion, and the original misunderstanding that they wanted you to hear directly. So they began preparing a second message, this time not written. And the first words they practiced revealed something far bigger than regret, because your soulmate was finally ready to tell you what they had secretly hoped would happen if the two of you ever spoke again.